So I need a couple of volunteers. Ooh, look at all those hands go up. 2 volunteers or 2 voluntolds. What's it going to be? There's a volunteer. And there we go. 2 volunteers. Come on up here. We know some vowel sounds. We don't know 6 of them yet, but I want you to each work together and put vowel sounds that you know up there. Y'all check them and see what they're going to get. Do it nice and big. Yep, right in the middle. Mm-hmm. Nope, the other way.
See, I told you I didn't lie. I did not lie.
Okay.
No, is that right?
It's a line more than a dot.
Yeah, I need to make it.
Good, okay. Yep.
And that's a notch. Should we write the sound or?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, so then,
That pen's working really well, isn't it? Yeah, this one's working well. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
well, then there's that one.
Okay.
Like tic-tac-toe a little bit. Go ahead.
So can I do the sometimes one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the sometimes one. With this break. And we don't have 6 of them, right?
There's something good with that.
Mm-hmm.
With that? Yeah, it's with the, it's a,
Yep, isn't it this? Yeah.
Almost. But that's okay.
Right, over the dot. Yeah.
No, down.
Not up high, down.
Because it follows.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. So if we look at number 1, ooh, I can finally use my gidget. Wait, where's my gidget? Is my gidget in here? I think my gidget. Aha, my gidget. Aha. Aha, my gidget. This one says what sound? This one says. This one says. This one says. What's that one say? Is that a vowel?
It can be.
Not by itself. Not by itself. Take it back out of there. Here's the eraser, so you don't get it all over your hands.
So if
Or
we had
do it with your hands if you want.
Jody, so if we had done this,
Yeah, but that's,
We haven't learned that one yet.
oh, you mean I'm jumping ahead?
Yeah, you are jumping ahead, you intelligent thing, you. Okay, so how about this one? What's that one? Yeah, except there's a little bit of a problem with that one.
Fix it.
No. This yud is up in the air,
Yeah,
and that,
needs to be way down.
this is the one that doesn't work. The hirik needs to be down at the bottom,
Gotcha.
okay? Because there's a letter in there, right?
Yep.
So this is following, and we always are looking for, does it have its own vowel? It doesn't, so it's working back on this one here. So there'd be a something box, something in there, okay? All right, so, let's see. Do you know the names of any of them?
Hatak,
Patak?
Hatak.
No, no? Kamats, okay. How about Robin, do you know your names?
Hatak, patak,
Hatak, Patak?
that's a yud.
Well, it's a something yud.
That's something yud.
But no, what is the something?
Oh, the e.
Because
the,
it's, yeah, what is this?
Harik?
Yes,
Harik
it's a
yud.
hirik yud. Uh-huh. And this one
Harik.
is a hirik. Now, really, that hirik is way up in the sky there, but it's hard to tell because we don't have a something box, but it would be underneath the letter, okay? So now we have a blank space right here. I think tonight we'll have a new vowel. What do you think? A new vowel. Ooh, a new vowel. Okay, So a new vowel, let's use blue.
Tony,
Yeah,
when you're writing on the board up there,
you can't read it back there, okay. All right,
it's so small.
we will write it bigger.
Yes.
Did Jerry pay you to say that?
No, I found
Okay.
Closer.
All right, so let's,
there's a reflection on
okay.
you can't really see it.
What's that one? Okay, what is it? A harik. What sound does it make? Okay, this one is a harik yud. What does it say? E. Okay, this one is a. I'm so proud of you guys. You're really getting the names of these vowels. Okay, what sound does it make? What is that? Hatak patak. I think it's funny. I don't know why I think that's funny, but I do. What sound does it make? Ah. So difficult, right? Okay, and over here we have a what? A patak. And an ah sound. I heard somebody saying it. Okay. So good. Is that easier to see? There's nothing in number 5. We need a new vowel. We need a new vowel. So, get ready. If we were going to put a harik, would we put it in box number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? 5. We'd put it in 5. If we were going to put a kamatz, would we put it in 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? 5. If we were going to put a patak, in 5. If we were going to put a hatak patak, 5. If we were going to put a harik yud,
3 and 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 3 and 5, correct. Okay? But this one is different.
Christmas? Okay.
Its name you'll recognize as a green monster from the marsh, right? Shrek. Okay, it's not a green monster from the marsh, but you can pretend. It's a blue thingy with a dot. Where's the dot?
Somewhere
Inside, okay? It's not over here, it's not above, it's not on this side, it's not below.
It's not touching the line?
It's not touching the line. Later, we're going to meet one that is similar, but is different. So that's why I'm making a point to pay attention to the formation of the Shrek.
It's not touching
Okay.
which line?
It's not touching the long line, the vertical line, okay? So it's not this,
Right.
like an F has an extra line on it or something like that. It's a separate dot, okay? All right, something else that's different about it is that it sits in here. Between, well, not really between 3 and 4, but it's going to be in this area. The way one person writes it, it might be fairly close to this box. The way somebody else writes it, it might be further over. It doesn't matter. It's in between the 2 letters. Okay? So we've been very used to looking now for a vowel down here and a letter over here. But remember, I've said from the very beginning, when we're reading, we're going to go this way and see if there's anything that we need to know out here. Then we're going to go across the top and see if there's anything we need to know there. Then we're going to come down through the letter, saying the sound of the letter, and picking up the vowel sound at the bottom. Then, before we're done, we're going to look over here just to see, is there anything over there that's influencing our letter that's inside the something box? And that's why we read with an up and down motion, more particularly when we're starting to read Hebrew than when we're become more accustomed to it, okay? Now when you read in English, you don't have to look carefully to see if there's a silent E on the end of cake. Your eye just sort of takes it in, and you know to say cake, right? But when you were in first and second grade, you had to think very carefully and look for that silent E that changes how your other vowel is going to be said, or whatever other rule you were learning in the mystical language of English, okay? In Hebrew, we're going up this way, looking. That'll become very quick and easy to your eye the more you're able to do it. Don't worry about it. For now, take your finger up and down through it. Your little baby students, you know, when we're little baby students, we use our finger and trace along so we can find those tricks, okay? So in this case, we're not going to find a vowel down here. We're going to think, ooh, there's no vowel. Aha, but there is a vowel because it's over here. Okay? So Shrek sits between letters, not underneath of letters. Shrek says, ooh. Not ooh, but ooh. Okay. Let me look at something real quick in my book. We can also see a Shrek that is a Shrek Yud. Okay? So I'm going to call that a separate vowel and say that we have 7 vowels. Next time when we spell them out, we're going to see those as 2 separate ones, just because they really do 2 different things, okay? But this one, when it has its Shrek Yud, remember when the Harik had an extra Yud after it? It kind of lengthened its sound and made it like a longer E sound. Not a great deal longer, but a little bit longer. You know that. In English, there is absolutely no equivalent for what this Shrek Yud does. But the closest we can come to explaining it in English is to say that this says ooh when it's just the Shrek, and ooey, like gooey. Okay, ooey gooey, mushy gushy, ooey gooey, okay? So if it has a Yud after it, it gets a little bit longer sound, just like if it had a Yud after it, it gets a little bit longer sound. There's no real equivalent in English. There's not a real way you can do it. So we just do it in Hebrew and we give it a little bit of an ooey sound, okay? You're not going to go wrong in this class if you remember that there's another trick to it and you're going to make a sound. We're all going to help each other to remember how that works, okay? So I wanted to review how we read through letters, our new vowel, remembering all the names of our vowels, and you guys are doing fantastic on that, okay? So now we'll empty this board for a moment. And there are 9 of you in this room that have a name tag on. And there are a lot of very similar things to your name tags. I want you to find the people who have the same name tag as you and do it as quick as possible. Go. Get in groups. If you have a name tag on, find the people that have the same name tag as you. What's that?
I said she said she hopes she's not one of a kind. But she definitely is.
Good. Good and good. You guys did fantastic at that. All right, so those of you who have a name tag that looks like this, who are you? There you go. Okay. What's the name of your name tag? Nun. Okay. That was a new letter to us last week. Okay. What sound, following our rule, what sound does nun make? Okay. Those of you that have a letter that looks like this, who are you? You are Gimmels. And Gimmel, following our rule, has a sound of what? G. Okay. Those don't look too much the same, but they could be mistaken, depending on people's handwriting. So our curriculum says, be careful, pay attention, because a lot of times letters are difficult to distinguish. But then there's this group of people, and they look somewhat different. What letter are you?
7.
No. Completely wrong. How about you, got a guess?
Well, I guess it's the final.
There you go.
But
She's been thinking ahead.
It's a little short for a resh, I guess.
Yeah, it's not a resh. It's not a resh. So it is, remember that I've said from the very beginning that we're going to meet some letters that look different. Y'all can sit down. Thank you very much. So we're going to meet some letters that change their shape when they're the last letter of a word. And that there are 5 of them. It's nice to know that they're limited. There's only 5 of them. You don't have to learn 22 more letters because they change their shape at the end of a word. But there are 5 of them. Stop it, Jerry. So, letters that change their shape at the end of a word, there are 5. This one that I have on the name tags tonight looks like this. It's called a nun safit. I spell that S-O-F-F-I-T, but I don't know if that's proper or not, but it's the right sounds, okay? So its name is nun safit. A lot of people will call it final nun. That's a clue that when the nun is in the last position, the final spot in a word, it's going to look different, okay? It makes the identical sound of any other nun. But just like we don't end a word with the letter I, typically, we end it with the letter Y. In all truth, an I and a Y aren't that different. Our English reading eyes say, sure, that's an I and that's a Y. But somebody who doesn't know English letters might say, that's a what? That's a what? What? Because they get it confused. We can get things confused too, because we are not native Hebraic speakers. But this nun does something different than a regular nun. So if we're writing a line to write on, we're going to hang our gimel there, right? So that we can put the vowel underneath of whatever vowel it is that we're saying. Let's say it's a gi. Okay, just for fun, we'll say it's a gi, all right? So we've got a line and we're hanging our letter from the line so that there's room to put that vowel underneath of it, right? So that's our line on our notebook paper. Okay, and when we're writing a nun, we're hanging it from our line, and we're leaving space underneath so we can put a vowel underneath of it, right? So we have ni, correct? You with me? Okay, so when I'm finishing a word, and it ends with a nun, I have it hanging from the line, but it extends below the line. And a letter that's in the final position is not going to have a vowel underneath of it. So you don't have to say, well, what about its vowel? It doesn't get one. Because just like the word gut, it's not gutty, okay? It's not gutta, it's gut. It ends with a consonant sound, okay? So a nun suffit can go below the line and not confuse us because we don't have to fit a vowel underneath of it. Everybody good with that? Okay. A nun suffit, the first of our 5 letters that's going to go below the line. We have another new letter to meet tonight. Nun suffit goes below the line, but the other letter that we're going to meet tonight is not a suffit, but goes below the line. That's why they put them in the same lesson, because they're both go below the line letters, okay? Now there's a lot of fanciness to the drawing of this letter. I'm going to draw it the way I draw it. It is the way it's in your notebook. I mean, it's in your workbook this way. Just like you remember, we've talked about the letter A in English looking like that in the books. That's how a printed A will look. And yet, when I write an A, I write like that. Okay? So there's lots of fancy ways, because you know, if you write an A in an old-fashioned decorative dictionary or Bible, you can end up with something like this, right? You know, you can get real super fancy, okay? But the other letter that we're going to meet is a kuf. This is how I draw a kuf. Mine is fairly simple. You'll see them much fancier. In your book, on what page is this? On page 36. Let's see, it looks something like, it kind of looks like that. Oh, okay, and well, you can see what it looks like. What'd they do? A straight line. Or something like that. I think you can see both of them as kufs. Okay? Kuf is spelled following our rule. What sound will kuf have? K. Right. Okay? So that's our other new letter, but it hangs below the line. So here's our notebook paper, okay? Do I really care if you put it like that or like that? Nope. Just so long as it comes all the way down. Therefore, when we want to put a vowel with it, we can't put it underneath. Now what are we going to do? We're going to put it beside it. Look, there's a space for it. You see why I said when we're reading, we look out here and go down. We look underneath there and we come up, right? Because in this case, this is out in front of our letter. But it's kind of tucked in there. So we know it's not connected with another letter that's out before it. It's kind of tucked into its kuf. The kuf is kind of sheltering it. So it would be key, correct. Correct. Okay? So, tricky, tricky, tricky. New shapes, new spaces. One more new concept, okay? over here. See yonder. Am I not an artiste? Beyond belief. We played a little game once before. I don't know that it really went over very well because I probably didn't do it very well. But we'll say that's his baseball hat. Ooh, see, I'm just not all that great an artist. Ooh, he needs some hair down here. That's his baseball hat. He's got his baseball in his hand, and he's got his glove. He's got his sneakers on. Ooh, he's ready to go, all right? I'm going to say that's a boy, okay? Help you out there. Okay, that's a boy. Is a boy a person or a thing? A person. So when we ask about who is that person, we used what question? Do you remember? Me. How did we spell me? Mem? With a harik underneath, okay. And then a yud. And that said, me. Who is the boy? If I have two things, if I have a baseball and a boy, can I say, me baseball? Who is the baseball? No, because that doesn't make sense. Who is the boy? I am the boy. Who is the mom? I am the mom, right? But who is the baseball? I am the baseball doesn't make any sense. So we need a different question, okay? So we need a question that's spelled like this. Oh, I'm good. Too low. Now I've messed up my red line. Come over here. What's that one going to be? Read it to me. Ma. Ma. Okay? And you're absolutely right. The question translated is what? Or what is? Remember, the is kind of pushed into the question, sort of unspoken as a vowel in there, okay? Or as a verb in there. So me, a person, ma, a thing. So ma baseball, what is the baseball? There's a fish and a baseball. What is the baseball? This is the baseball. Okay? But what is the father doesn't make sense. What is the daughter doesn't make sense. Who is the daughter? Who is the father? Who is David? Who is Rebecca? What is a table? What is a car? What is the challah bread doing over there? Yes, I am a poet, but I know it. Okay, so let's take the boy out. And here we have part of a question. What is that part of the question? Can you read that one? What do you see? Yeah, down here at the bottom. Watch out, I'll make you read it. He's snickering at me.
No, I'm laughing because I used that word earlier today.
Oh, did you? Okay. So who's going to read up and down? What? I should probably give you some more vowels, shouldn't I? That would be kind, wouldn't it? Yeah, okay. I gotta find it to see what my, here it is. Okay, Let's read out here. Ba, ba. That's ba. Oh. Sorry. Ba, ba, yeet, baba yeet. We talked about this being a prepositional phrase. In. Or in the, maybe. Okay? So in the, now what's a bayit? A house, in the house. Okay. So we need a question over here if we're going to ask a question. But we don't know what we're going to ask about. But we're going to ask about babayit, in the house. We're going to ask about in the house. Okay. So what I want to know is, I don't care about babayit now. I only care about this question over here that's going to complete the sentence. All right? So, do I want me or ma? Ma, why? It's a thing, okay? So in this case, it's a, whoop. Ma babayit. The answer is a son babayit. Okay? If we take the son out and we put in let's see, she has a dress. Because I'm so good at this. Okay? So, who is this? We're going to call this mom. Okay? So in Hebrew, ima. Okay? But we don't care that she's ima. And we don't care that she's babayit. We care what our question is. Ma or me? Me. Okay? Me. Me babayit. Who is in the house? Not me is in the house, but me is our question. So we have two questions now in our repertoire. One is me, meaning who, and the other is ma, meaning what. Good? We're going to do some practice on our practice skills page in a couple minutes, okay? All righty. So, what's our time? 10 after 7? Okay. Do you want, I'll give you a choice at this point. Do you want to do our paleo and then come back to our practice reading? Or do you want to go do some practice reading and then do our paleo? Paleo? Paleo it is.
Okay, one of the first things, and I probably mentioned this before about Hebrew, it is a very functional language. It describes function. Remember me saying that to you? So, in other words, if I were going to say to you in Hebrew, you would say in English, say this is a pen, or it's a marker. In Hebrew, the name of something describes its function, which would be, it's a writer. It's a writer. So Hebrew is a functional language, and it describes function. And the letter that I'm going to teach you is no different. So we're going to start with this letter, kuf, that we learned today. We're going to learn the ancient pictograph of that. Okay? And back in Moses' day, it looked like this. And really what it means is the back of the head, or time. So Hebrew thought and process of time is different from our modern concept of time. The modern concept of time is that when we look forward, we're going into the future. It's not the way with the Hebrew. The Hebrew is, it's behind you because it's something unseen. You can't see it. You can see where you've been back in time, but you can't see what's in the future. So the concept is sort of reversed. So you have to sort of wrap your brain around it. And this letter sort of demonstrates it because it really means the back of the head, and it is exactly what it looks like. It evolved through time, but the process of time with this letter, the back of the head, it really means a set apart time or the back of the head, right? So it's a set time of something. So it evolved like this, and in the wilderness you'll have something even like that, and through time you get the Phoenicians and the Greeks get a hold of something, and they always mess it up. The little stem can get a little longer, and then our modern day, it actually evolved into that letter. Okay, do you see where that comes from now? Okay, that's the evolution of that letter. It's fascinating. So we're going to look at this word that is in our lesson. I want to make sure I get this correct. And I'm going to write it out in regular Hebrew. And I'm going to put the vowel in here for your edification. Okay. This Hebrew word is kiddush or kadosh. It actually is about the same word. The pronunciation of it is actually kiddush is the Yiddish form of this word with the meal. Okay? It's actually what we're going to do. We're actually going to do a kiddush tonight. Jerry's going to do a kiddush for you, and it is you'll recognize it, but it is a set apart time. So let's pictograph this out. So the kuf, it goes down like this, and it means time and the back of the head. Okay, means time back of the head. This is a dalet. Anybody remember what that is? It's a door. It's a door. And it's a tent door. And let me see if I can get this correct. It's like the flap of a door. And sometimes I don't get that all correct. Actually, it goes like this, like that. And then the shin, what does that mean? Does anybody remember what the shin looks like? Teeth. Okay. It can mean to destroy, to press into, like with your teeth. Press into, destroy, consume. Okay?
What was the meaning of this all that?
Door. I'm sorry. Okay? And the door is the tent flap, and it means to go back and forth in through. Okay? It's like a tent flap. All right? So a kiddush, a set apart meal, means that it's the time through the door to consume. Okay? That's my version of it. Now, remember, whenever you do pictographics, it's always context. So when you look at your context, you can get what those words would mean. The Kiddush is a meal, but it's also a set-apart time. In Hebrew, the word kadosh means holy. Our concept of holy is something that's just, so to be reverent, but that's not what it means in Hebrew. What it means in Hebrew, because it's a very functional language, it means to be set apart. It's time set apart through the door. Kadosh. It's time that's set apart. If you are holy, you are set apart. You're a set apart one. Okay? So it involves time, and it's a specific time that's put aside, that has a specific function. There are specific feasts that are holy, they're kadosh, and they're set apart. It's a time that's set apart. And the Kiddush is a meal that's set apart. So Jerry's actually going to do the Kiddush for us tonight. But before we do that, I want to do one more quick.
Third one from the right. The
Instead of Shrek, the third from the letter at the top, after
yeah,
the delay.
after the delay.
This is a vowel. That's the vowel I threw in there, so you could get the word. Yes, it's a Shrek. Shrek.
So isn't that an oo sound?
Yes. Kadush. That's actually a Yiddish word, and it's actually spelled the exact same way. Okay? So it is a set-apart time. So one of the study tips I'm going to give you, whenever you read the New Testament, the ancient rabbis and the Pharisees and the Sadducees, because they were so paranoid about breaking the law of the Father, they set all these rules up. And it was they had the verbal law. It was passed down. It's called the Talmud. It's a Talmudic law, and it was the rabbinical laws and those things. And those were to build fences around the law so we never break it, and we must not walk more than 10 steps on Sabbath out the door, and we must not turn on our light switch. Those are Talmudic influences, okay? They were never written down until well after, I forget how many years, how many centuries after Messiah died and was risen.
They were being written, but they were just always edited and being added onto.
Right. So,
Repeat what he just said so the microphone picks it up.
huh?
Repeat what he just said so the microphone picks it up.
They were constantly being re-edited and written down.
With all the persecution, they were afraid that they were just going to be dispersed and wouldn't be able to pass it on, and that's when
Right. But then they became distorted so Yeshua directly addresses this in the New Testament, in the Brit Hadashah. He said, whenever you read it, when he says, it has been written, he's speaking directly of his Father's law and Torah. When he says, you have heard it said, he's speaking of the rabbinical laws. Okay?
Is that written in a book somewhere?
No, but you can
I
go.
remember reading it recently.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, yeah. So that's a really good study tip, because some people will take, when Yeshua says it has been heard, it has been said, that's not what the Father said. But what is written is what the Father said. So you can decipher that. That's a good deciphering tool for you whenever you read the New Testament, and to distinguish between Talmudic influences and rabbinical influences versus what the Father's instructions were. Is that clear?
So just the Torah's God is the Bible.
Correct.
Okay. What did they call the rabbinical law?
The Talmud. Actually, today we call it the Talmud.
Yeah.
Now, there are truths in Talmud, but there are also things that Messiah hated. So if you read it, be extremely careful. Okay? There are truths in Talmud, but some truths, well, some stuff in there is not truth. And so be careful with it. You must really have your foundation in Scripture. I use it sometimes so that I can get a better understanding of the culture, and that's my purpose in looking at it.
Don't mistake that we're not saying that the prophets and the poetry and the other things that are involved in the Old Testament are not Talmudic. Talmudic is a separate commentary set of books. It's not, we're not talking about the prophets
Right.
and the rest of history that's written in the Old Testament. Separate set rabbinical commentary is the Talmud.
Right. So be careful if you decide to take that as a study tool. Have the understanding that that is a rabbinical thing, but I use it for like cultural, to learn my culture in it. So it's very helpful with that and to understand the culture of the day. So I'm going to ask Jerry to come on up, and we're going to do a Kiddush. You'll recognize it, and he's going to talk a little bit about that.
Very important you understand one thing. When this was first written, that vowel wasn't there, so don't get hung up on pronunciation, because pronunciation followed context. If we were talking about a meal, you're looking at Kiddush. If you were talking about being set apart, you're talking about Kadosh. So don't get confused when you start seeing these vowels, especially like that, because some of it's dialect, some of it is just context. And when the Masoretes added the vowels, in my opinion, they messed me up because I don't use them. Okay. You're going to recognize this, and it's going to look a lot like something most of you have probably had in church called communion. When Yeshua and his disciples were having the Last Supper, they weren't having communion as we know it today. It was the last meal. The last meal before the next day, the lambs were going to be slaughtered for the Passover. We know that because the next morning, remember that the Pharisees couldn't go into Pilate's judgment hall, right? They didn't want to be defiled because they still wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So we know that this occurred the night before Passover. And the really, really cool thing is, Yeshua started talking about this in John chapter 6. You know, he talks about the bread and him being the bread in John chapter 6, right? He starts this lesson early in his ministry and he finishes it the night before his crucifixion. It's an amazing, amazing teaching that I don't have time to go in through the whole thing. But where does he get it? Where does he get it? You know, when we read in Matthew and Mark, it said that he blessed, right? He didn't bless the bread. He didn't bless the wine. He blesses the Most High. Why? It all goes back to Genesis. Have you all ever heard that the answer is really in Genesis? Because it really is. Abraham has just won a great victory. And who does he get a visit from? Melchizedek. They're going to recognize it as Melchizedek, but it's technically the Melech Tzedek, a righteous king. Melech meaning king, Zedek meaning righteous. He comes, Abraham brings out the bread and the wine, and that person who is probably Shem, as all the traditions have it, and there's a lot of legitimacy, I believe, to that particular tradition. He blesses this bread and this wine, but not the bread and the wine. He uses it as a picture. And the picture that he paints through the pictographs in the Paleo, Abraham automatically recognizes what he's saying. And he's so overwhelmed in what he's said and what's being said there that he gives 10% of everything he owns to that righteous king. Abraham was a very wealthy man at this point in his life. You know, a lot of times we think that these poor old shepherds, Abraham wasn't poor. He had 318 men working for him and their families. He was wealthy. But he's so overwhelmed, he's so overtaken, he gives that righteous king 10% of everything he owns. So what did he hear? And by the way, the tradition is, it's far be it from me to follow tradition, but the tradition is that the bread is always blessed first. Because when a Hebrew sits down to eat with bread, if he sits down at a table, he cannot speak until he offers this blessing. He can't get up from the table until he offers this blessing. So somebody needs to hand him some bread, right? But when the Melchizedek broke the bread in front of Abraham, and he offered the blessing to the Almighty, Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lekam min haaretz. Anybody want to translate that? Blessed are you, Yehovah, our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Abraham recognized that the Almighty was going to bring forth something very, very special from the earth. And he's going to illustrate it with something very common that we eat almost every day, bread. He saw the salvation not only of his eventual prodigy, right? That's the word I want. But he saw the salvation of all of humanity being offered that very moment for the first time. He was so overtaken, he gave him 10%. He went back and he told his family, he told his servants, whenever bread is served, you offer this blessing. That's how far back that goes. Yeshua offered that same blessing the night that he was betrayed. That's what was happening at that supper. That's how important this is. You can pass that around if you want to. Yes, ma'am.
Is that, that's not what he would have broken though at Passover, right?
It wasn't Passover. It wasn't Passover.
I'm talking about when Messiah did it.
It wasn't Passover. It was the night before Passover. Don't forget, the night before Passover, you get rid of all the leaven. What happened to Judas that night? He's kicking out all the leaven. He's cleaning it out. By the way, the Greek word in that particular passage, in I think it's Matthew, is artone, risen bread. So don't forget, we have all these things that what we want to see and what we think happened might not always be what it is when you look through the culture very carefully. Yes, ma'am.
The second Adam, because he came up from the earth,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
and he is bread of life.
Mhm.
Wow.
Try to repeat what she just said so the microphone picks it up, please.
As I'm eating. The second Adam, the bread of life, born from the earth. His earthly body, still nothing much more than mud, kind of formed together, right? On the other hand, his spirit, his heavenly body, very much different than what we have in us today.
That's amazing.
John chapter 6 is where he starts that teaching. Now, shortly as she's finishing up there, one of the things that John chapter 6 says, and we get hung up on, is where Jesus says, you know, take this is my flesh, eat my flesh, right? What first century Jewish man is going to say that? I don't think you're going to find it. If we go back to the original context and the original writings, I don't think that part's going to be in John chapter 6. I think that came in later from the scribes. So when we study these things, we actually have to study. We can't just read it and hope something sinks in. So. And this is why I don't handle grape juice. The wine, if you want to, you can start passing that out. That way you don't have to stand there and listen to it. The wine represents in the Hebrew culture two things. It represents blood and it represents life. What Yeshua is using here is fascinating for me because he's using a ceremony of betrothal with his disciples. He takes this wine, and what happens when a prospective young groom sees a young lady that he's interested in, maybe they've spoken, maybe not, he will take his father when they get to be a certain age, they will go to this young lady's house and there will be negotiations that take place. Now during these negotiations it becomes evident to the prospective bride's father that this is what's happening, and some things are done. Typically at this point something of value may be exchanged. It might be a chicken, it might be a Ferrari, it might be a cookie, who knows? Doesn't matter, because it just has to be something of value. It's where we get the wedding ring from today. During this ceremony, after negotiations, the bride will be entered into the room, and the groom will offer her a cup of wine. And it's up to the bride, or prospective bride, to either take that wine and drink it, meaning they're as good as married, or she has the opportunity to say no. Now you'd think that in this culture, the woman would have to drink the wine, right? She doesn't have to. Maybe she's got her eyes set on somebody that's more wealthy. Maybe he's better looking. Maybe she's looking at this guy going, you'll never amount to anything. It's up to the woman to decide if she chooses to marry the man or not. Don't get hung up on a patriarchal society. It really wasn't designed that way. It was equal. But she does that. She has that authority. She can do that. When Yeshua hands out that cup and he says, you drink from this. I'm not going to have any more of it until I drink it with you in the Father's kingdom. What's he doing? He's mimicking that ceremony exactly. Don't forget, he said before that, I go to prepare a place for you. I'm going to go build you a house. Same exact ceremony. It all comes together at the Last Supper. He starts laying these things out months in advance, and it all comes together there. Now the really cool thing is we have what we know as the renewed covenant, right? Because Brit Hadashah means renewed covenant, not new, it's renewed. So there must be a confirmation of this renewed covenant. When does this new covenant get confirmed? This is the really cool part. When you're at the marriage supper of the Lamb, and Yeshua walks in and he picks up a cup and he's there for the first time, and he looks around at everybody, he says, you know, it's been a long time, but I'm glad you're here. And he offers the blessing that Melchizedek, that righteous king, first said in front of Abraham a long time ago now. And he says, Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam, Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pori hagafen. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our God, King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. Abraham recognized there would be a confirmation at some point in the future where this bread that comes from the earth does something so special. He renews the covenant that we have violated, that allows us to join him and the Father and come together and be completely made perfect once again. There's going to be a little bit of a change, though. I think he's going to add a couple of words. I think he's going to add l'chaim olam, to life everlasting. It's really interesting also to know that if you watch any Hebrew news stories, interviews, if there's wine served, you're always going to see them pause and they're going to offer that blessing before they take a drink. It's that ingrained into the Hebrew culture that you stop. You're not blessing the wine because it's just an inanimate object. You're blessing the Almighty for everything that he has done.
Read with me. Ya, yin. Final nun. Ya, yin. Ya, yin. Got it? Ya, yin. You're reading Hebrew now. Okay. Let's try another word for tonight.
It's yayin or yain?
Yin. Uh-huh.
Yin is how it's spelled, pronounced typically yine.
Yine, sort of like wine. Maybe it's kind of exaggerated, but that's a final nun, right? Nun safit. Read for me. Gun. We've gone to the garden. Gone. This one you might actually recognize when you hear it said. Let me move gone over here. This one you've probably said or heard it said. Has our new vowel and our new letter. Wait a minute, did I do it right? Yes, I did it right. Read for me. Shook. Shook. Shoo. Wook. Shook. Have you heard of the shook? Have you ever been in a little marketplace in an Arab village? Or in a Hebrew village? You've never have? Well, you should go. A shook. It's a Scrabble word. Yay, Scrabble words. But I've heard it in American culture too, a shook. Just like you might hear about, what's the word for a Spanish or Mexican little grocery store that has some of everything? Mercado? No, that's not the one I'm most familiar with. What did you just say? No, the other one. A bodega. A bodega. It becomes an Americanism because that culture is a part of our bigger culture. So if I said, go to the bodega, the first time I said it to you, you might have no idea what it means. But if you've been in a bodega once, you know what a bodega is, because it can become a part of your normal Americanisms, even though it's a Spanish word.
That's kind of like when first people invited us to go to the food.
Oh, wait.
That's similar to when the first time I heard about going to the flea market.
Yeah.
And I was trying to translate. I'm like, what are we gonna go buy in that market?
Fleas.
Fleas? Because I am just translating the words,
Yes.
but I didn't understand that.
Yes, that's a really good example. So bodega is a new word to some people. A shuk is another new word, but in our culture, we incorporate all peoples. You know, so if you live near a neighborhood that has a number of Islamic people or a Muslim-style community, they're probably going to say they have a shuk, which is a marketplace. Okay? So a new word you can add to your vocabulary. Remember, this is our vowel that's in a different place, and this is our letter kuf that hangs below the line. What's our other letter that hangs below the line? A nun safit, right? Okay. If kuf has a vowel, where is it going to sit? Inside here. That's not a very clean, is it? But it's going to sit in there. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So, how many reading supervisors do we have? 3 tonight? I think we just have 3 reading supervisors. Jerry, do you feel comfortable being a reading helper? Yeah, you want to try? Okay. So we don't want to get too picky with people, okay? So we're going to have 4 reading groups, okay? So Jerry is going to be back in that corner back there. I'll be up here. Pam's over here. Second Jerry is going to be on the back corner back over there, okay? Divide yourselves up, try to even it out, okay? And we're going to try and read pages 37 and 38. And if everybody's reading comfortably, move on to the activity pages, but do not do